Hey there, I'm Charl, and today I'm going to unlock the secret of creating captivating guitar solos and melodic guitar parts. Now here's a simple truth: many guitar players kind of struggle when it comes to creating melodic parts on the guitar, and they often fall into that trap where they're just kind of aimlessly noodling up and down with a single scale pattern and not really knowing how to make the notes fit over the chords. Now, one of the magic elements of creating awesome melodies lies in understanding the world of opposites. It's much like a kind of a gripping story, right? There needs to be tension and resolution. And you need to understand that in music, that's going to translate to chord tones and non-chord tones. And when you master these building blocks alongside certain melodic tools I'm about to show you, you're really going to see your melodic playing skyrocket on the guitar. Now let me go ahead and play a quick melody that I've composed using all of the concepts that you're about to learn. And afterwards, we'll get to the lesson, and I'm going to break everything down note for note so that you too can use these tools and building blocks to create some captivating melodic playing on the guitar. And then finally, at the end of this video, I'll let you know where you can get this exact backing track to jam over yourself.
2,
all right,
3,
let's dig in.
4.
Alright, now that was the guitar part, and hopefully you found that it was melodic and the notes really fit the chords well. So let's go ahead and do a quick teaching session on all of those elements so that I can show you all of the tools and techniques that I used to build that melody. Alright, so let's start by looking at chord tones. Chord tones are literally the notes that make up a chord. And of course, in a chord progression, you've got multiple chords, which means that you'll have multiple chord tones. Non-chord tones, on the other hand, these are like the spicy ones, the notes that aren't part of that chord, but they add an all-important tension and flavor to the chord. So you can kind of think of it like this. Chord tones, they are your home base, while non-chord tones, these are the notes that you can use to add some adventure and excitement to your playing. So let me demonstrate that real quick. We are going to be in the key of G major. That means we're going to have one scale known as the G major scale. So that's my scale. I have 7 notes within that scale. But in a typical chord progression, you might have G, D, E minor, and C, which will be a 1-5-6-4 chord progression. That means for each chord, you'll have 3 chord tones and 4 non-chord tones. So let's check that out for G, for example. So when we have this pad of a G, I've got my notes G, B, and D. Those are 3 notes of my 7-note major scale. The other 4 notes, namely as you can hear, those notes don't really sound like home. They add like a bit of a flavor. But if I do this, if I land on some of those chord tones, then that sounds like home. Now, if I'm going to go over to a C chord, It's the same scale, but different notes now become the chord tones. For example, if I play a G, that's an E, or a C, these are all chord tones. But if I do those same notes over a D chord, for example, they don't fit anymore. And then going back to G, that's going to sound more like home. Now, for all you need to know at this stage is that you've got chord tones. Over a chord, it's going to sound like home. And you've got non-chord tones that are going to add some spice. That will be your building blocks of those 7 notes. And I'm going to now give you some tools that you can use to take all of those materials, so to speak, and build some melodies together. All right, so specifically, we are going to look at 5 different melodic tools that you have to go ahead and assemble some melodies together using both chord tones that sound like home and non-chord tones that add some spice and flavor and tension. Now, these 5 melodic tools are passing tones, neighbor tones, suspensions, appoggiaturas, and escape tones. Each one of these melodic tools is like a different journey that you can take. It's like a different way to tell a story. And music is all about telling stories. Take passing tones, for instance. Imagine that you'll be visiting a family member in another country with a connecting flight. You're going to leave your home, you're going to then make a stopover, and then you are going to reach another home. That is how passing tones work. Let me go ahead and give you a demonstration of that now. So it means you're going to start on a note that is home, then you're going to take a note that is a non-chord tone, and you're going to land on a chord tone again. And there's a stepwise movement between each of those. If I'm on a C chord, for example, it'll be C, home, D, to E. Let me play these passing tones for you now over that 1/4 chord progression. Alright, nice and simple. I start on a chord tone that is home. I move up to the next note in the scale that is no longer home because it's no longer a chord tone. And then I go up to the very next note in the scale and you'll land back at home. That happens when you start on the G note, which is your root, or the 3rd, which will be B. Let's go ahead and check out neighboring tones. Now, neighboring tones, on the other hand, they are like visiting your neighbor. So you're going to step out of your house, visit your neighbor for a bit, you're going to go to their house, and you're going to return back home, right? That's nice and simple, and you can either go to the neighbor on your left or the neighbor on your right. So how does that apply to your guitar playing? Well, it's nice and simple. Between all of your chord tones, there will always be a non-chord tone. You don't get 2 chord tones right after each other because your chord tones will be the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th notes of the scale. So for example, if I have G as a chord tone, I can visit my neighbor on my left, go back home, or I can visit my neighbor on my right. That is the concept of a neighboring tone. Let me go ahead and demo that for you right now. Alright, so as you can see there, nice and simple, and what basically happened is I had a home note, I visited a neighbor, and I went back home. And I could either go to the neighbor on the left or the neighbor on the right. That's going to be the note below or above. That's the second type of melodic tool. Our third type will be what's known as suspensions and resolutions. These are kind of like movie cliffhangers. You know, if you watch a movie, the main character is left in some kind of a danger, there's a lot of tension, and then somehow they get saved and there is all this resolution. Now, the way that we use suspensions and resolution in playing is you are going to take a chord tone of the chord you're playing, then you're going to hang that much like a cliffhanger. You're going to suspend that chord tone over your following chord, which means it's no longer going to be a chord tone in that instance, but you're going to hang it there for a bit of tension and then you are going to resolve it. Most of you would be familiar with if I play a G note, a chord, and I go to a D. See what I did? I suspended that G note over the D chord, and then I resolve that suspension. So you take a chord tone like a G, that is a chord tone over G, you suspend it over a D chord. That G is no longer a chord tone, it adds some tension, and then you're going to go ahead and resolve that. Alright, so we've had passing tones, we've had neighbor tones, and we've had suspensions. The final two are what's known as appoggiaturas and escape tones. Now, I like to think of these like parkour jumps. You have these big leaps and small steps that you can use to create some exciting motion in your melodies. Now, on the guitar and in music, when you have a scale, you can play all the notes right after each other. All of that was stepwise motion. I started on one note and then I went up to the very next note every time. There were no skips, there were no jumps. It was just like nice and simple. We call those steps. But of course, I can skip over notes. And you can combine steps together with leaps to kind of create a little bit more excitement in your playing. Now, when you play an appoggiatura, you're going to start with a leap and you're going to resolve by a step. And escape tones, they are the opposite. You're going to start with a step and you're going to resolve by a leap. So what does that mean? Well, much like all of the other examples, you have to start on a home note. Then I can leap up to a non-chord tone and resolve down a step to a chord tone. So nice and simple. Or I can go down with a leap and then resolve by a step. I start on my home note, I leap down, I step back up. So this balance of opposites, when I leap up, I need to step down, or when I leap down, I need to step up. That's what's known as an appoggiatura. So let me go ahead and play some appoggiaturas for you now over this 1-4 chord progression. Alright, so that's an appoggiatura. I start on a home note, I leap up, and I step down to a chord tone again. Or I start on a home note, I leap down to a non-chord tone, and I step up to a chord tone. So that starts with that exciting jump. Again, back to our parkour example, a big jump, and then a small step to safety. What we're going to do now is we're going to do escape tones that starts with a small jump, in other words, a step. And then from there, I'm going to leap to safety. So what does that mean? It means I start on a home note, I step down to a non-chord tone for some excitement, and then I'm going to leap up to a chord tone. So for G, for example, I can start on the G, I step down to the F sharp, and I leap up to the B. As you can hear, that adds a bit of motion and drama and excitement and tension that then gets resolved. It's very different to a passing tone, which is nice and simple, where this one is nice combination of notes there. I can also step up and leap down. So if I start on the home note of a D over a G chord, I step up to a non-chord tone, which is my E, and then I'm going to go ahead and resolve on a B note. So let me go ahead and show you escape tones over that 1/4 progression, and then we've covered everything. We'll go ahead and break down the part I showed you right in the beginning. So now let's look at how you can apply these building blocks, which is your material, so to speak, your chord tones and your non-chord tones, together with these melodic tools that I've shown you, which would be passing tones, neighbor tones, suspensions, appoggiaturas, escape tones. That means now that you have both tools and building material, you can start constructing melodies. And when you are creating a melody, you want to focus on the triads in your chord progression, because that's going to give you a solid framework, showing you all of the chord tones. All of the other notes within your scale will be your non-chord tones, and they'll be creating the tension and the excitement that's going to allow you to have some twists in like a really exciting story. So you have 7 notes in the scale, but for each chord, only 3 of those notes will be chord tones, making the remaining 4 notes non-chord tones. Right, so like we said, we have the scale. So this will be my G triad, which means these 3 notes, they are my chord tones, and then these 4 notes, they are non-chord tones. You'll use those 4 tones to create some excitement. On the contrary, this will be a C triad, which means the other notes in the scale, the A, the B, the D, and the F sharp, over a C chord will give you the exciting non-chord tones. You want to do the same for E minor, and you want to do the same for D. That way, you know these are my safe tones, safe tones, safe tones, safe tones. And everything that is not a safe tone, which would be the remaining notes in the scale, those will be your non-chord tones, adding the excitement in your playing. Now, knowing this simple concept will help you to distinguish between the difference between the notes that sound like home and the notes that create some excitement and tension in your playing. Now, in order to take this from practice to performance, all you need to know is what are the notes and how to put them together using these range of melodic tools that I've shown you. You want to make sure that when you're practicing, you use these techniques often enough so that they can kind of become second nature, just like riding a bike. That initial fear that you might have and some of that stumbling and fumbling around with a scale shape will soon give way to balance and freedom and ultimately creativity for you to use these tools. And be okay with making mistakes, because that's part of the journey as you're opening doors to some really unimaginable creativity. So don't be afraid to take some risks. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly break down that part that I played in the beginning. The first chord was a G major chord. So I started on this G note, and I used the concept of a neighbor tone. You see what I did? I play my G note and I go back down to F sharp, which is my neighbor tone, and back to G. I added some rhythm just to kind of spice that up together with a little bit of palm muting. And then after that, in order to bring some bit of more excitement, because if I'm just stepping up and down between 2 notes, you know, there's not much happening there, so I did this. And you remember that was a leap up and a step down. So for the first chord, I used neighbor tones together with an appoggiatura. I leapt up and I stepped down. And then I broke the rule a little bit. I went from the G note, I leapt up to the B note, which is a non-chord tone, and then I stepped up to a chord tone. Normally when you leap up, you have to step down, or when you leap down, you have to step up. But it's also okay to do both in the same direction. So that's what I did for the first part, is using neighbor tones together with appoggiaturas. Then, when the song went into the build part, I basically just played eighth notes on the guitar and I used passing tones. So I started on a B note, I passed up to the C note, it's a non-chord tone, and then I landed on the D note, which is a chord tone. Then I leapt up to the F sharp and I stepped up to the G. So that section sounded like this. That was a simple passing tone concept together with a leap and a step at the end. And then when we went to C, I did this. Where I used passing tones together with a suspension. For the C, I played E. I passed up to the F sharp. Then I suspended the G note. That's part of my C chord. I suspended it over the D chord. And I resolved it. At that point, we were in a more of an open section. So then I played escape tones where I step up and I leap down. I just ring on that B note. Then the chords went to D. And I played another escape tone. I step up and I leap down. We went back to G, played another escape tone. This time I step down and I leap up. And then for the C, I step down and I leap down. I step up and I leap down. A neighbor tone that then goes back to a chord tone again. Alright, and that is really it. We've really dug into the nuts and bolts of melody creation today and really looked at the role of chord tones and non-chord tones to be your building blocks, together with some of those super useful melodic tools in which you can go ahead and combine these for some exciting melodies. Now, the true essence of music really lies in contrast and the balance of these components, and when you master them, it will drastically elevate your guitar playing, making you a way more melodic and expressive guitarist and, of course, worshiper. I want to encourage you to go ahead and put these techniques into action, into your own playing, so that you can experience the transformation firsthand in your music and in your creativity. And to help you get started, we've created a backing track for you, the same one that we used in the beginning of the video, that you can use to practice along with in your own session. So just go ahead and check out the description, click on that link, enter your email address and tell us where to send it. Then it's yours to use in your practice sessions, and we'll also throw in the tabbed examples of the parts that I played. But we've only really just scratched the surface of all of this. To really delve even deeper into the mechanics of melodies and really get a deeper understanding of all these concepts, I want to invite you to check out our in-depth guide, Unlocking the Hidden Language of Melodies, so that you can go ahead and learn more about these concepts. Have fun, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep discovering those awesome and incredible melodies that are waiting for you right here, hidden in plain sight on the guitar neck.